This is basic cleaning for your medium frame Taurus revolvers. This will work with the Model 82 that we have pictured here, as well as the Model 66, the 608, and in fact, all of the Taurus tracker revolvers will work to be cleaned using this method that we've got going here. Now, first thing first, we want to make sure that all of our guns are safe and clear before we start handling them, whether it's for cleaning or maintenance or any sort of practice. To do that on the medium frame revolvers and the tracker series, we're going to flip the gun over and we're going to go ahead and push this cylinder release forward, and then we're going to press the cylinder out of the gun. Doing that, I can now look down inside the chambers, make sure all of my chambers are empty, and I can also look down the barrel, see light coming through the barrel, and know that there are no obstructions in the barrel. So I'm good to go to start cleaning this gun. Now, when I clean this gun specifically, your medium frame revolvers are going to be most commonly used for duty, for competition, and for a little bit of hunting. So those might be subjected to environmental conditions that would necessitate you taking a look at the exterior of the revolver and wiping it down first, removing any dirt, debris, or anything like that that may be left over from your last match, your last hunt, or your last hike. In this case, we don't have any of those issues going on, so I can move straight away into cleaning the cylinder. First and foremost on the cylinder, we're going to go ahead and clean the extractor star and the area under the extractor star. Then we'll move on and we'll clean the actual face of the cylinder itself. To do that, we're going to start with some solvent. If you shoot a lot of lead ammunition, you're going to want to get a specific solvent that's designed to remove lead fouling, which is a lot tougher to remove than just the regular carbon fouling that you'll see on this gun. Any solvent that's designed to remove lead fouling should only be used in a well-ventilated area, however. Now, this solvent is perfectly fine for the carbon fouling that we have here, so we're going to start by spraying the top of the cylinder, and then we're going to spray the face of the cylinder. Just like that. Now, moving on, we're going to go ahead and grab our metal brush. With this, we're going to go and start by brushing down the face of the cylinder, brushing down and away from the gun so that any bits and bobs of fouling or particulate will not go into the actual area under the star. Once we've given that a good brushing, we're going to go ahead and hold the star up, and we're going to brush out under the star as well. Again, making sure we're brushing down and away to remove fouling from the interior of the gun. Once we've given that a good brushing and we're relatively confident it's clean, we can go ahead and flip the revolver over, muzzle pointing up, and scrub down the face of the cylinder. We'll want to periodically rotate the cylinder as we do this so we can get all 6 of the front of the charge holes cleaned off. And again, these steps will work whether you've got a gun with a matte finish like this Model 82 or a Taurus tracker with a stainless finish. Now that I've done that, I can go ahead and remove any excess solvent from the cylinder face as well as the body of the cylinder, making sure to also get under the star to remove any excess solvent from there, because if there's solvent left under there, it could attract unburnt powder or dirt, which could cause the gun to bind up and not work when you need it to go off. Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and take our bore snake and we're going to run this through all 6 of the chambers in the revolver cylinder to remove any of that solvent as well as any unburnt powder or carbon fouling that may be present. Now, while the Model 82 in 38 Special only has 6 cylinders, or 6 charge holes, your Taurus trackers in 357 Magnum and your Model 66, those are going to be 7 shooters. So you do have to do this process one extra time with the 7 shooter than the number of times that you would have to on this very straightforward meat and potatoes 38 Special. All right. Once the cylinder is good to go, we can turn our attention to the other aspects of the gun that require cleaning, most notably the face of the frame where the firing pin protrudes through the frame and actually makes contact with the primer, and the forcing cone. It's important to keep the forcing cone clean, especially because this is where the bullet begins to enter the barrel and starts to interact with the rifling. A dirty forcing cone can affect your accuracy. Now I'll start here on the firing pin. Again, a quick splash of solvent and a judicious application of my brush will take care of this in no time. We'll wipe down the surface, making sure that there's no leftover solvent in there. And once I'm satisfied that that's clean, we can move to the forcing cone, where we will again give it a blast of solvent and get to work with our brush. When brushing the forcing cone, it's important to make sure that you're angling the brush on both sides of the forcing cone at about like a 30 to 45 degree angle to make sure that you're getting the outside edges of the cone as well as the top edges of the cone equally clean. When that's done, we can go ahead and wipe this area down. And it is nice and tidy. So the last thing that we'll do is, because we've already put solvent down the barrel of this gun, and I've mostly been shooting jacketed ammo, I'm just going to drag the barrel with the bore snake real quick. If you've been shooting a lot of lead ammo, again, you're going to need to use a specific solvent to remove lead, and you'll probably need something a little bit tougher than this bore snake, like a copper brush or something like that, to get any lead fouling out of the barrel. Once you've dragged your barrel with your bore snake, you can go ahead and wipe down the exterior surface, removing any extra solvent that may have splashed around while you were brushing the gun down. Now that we've removed any excess solvent from the surface area of the gun, it's time to move on to lubrication. Now, if you're using your medium frame or your Taurus tracker as a woodsy gun or an outdoors gun that you only carry in specific times and you're going to store it for a long time, you're going to want to give it a very thorough lubrication. And we'll talk about that once we get through lubricating the actual functional parts. For me, this is a match gun. This is a competition gun. So I want it set up knowing that I will be taking it out again in a few days to go shoot a match. So I don't want a heavy coat of oil on it because I don't want to attract debris to it, which is what a heavy coat of oil can do in an actual outdoor environment. That means with this gun, we're going to lubricate several key areas, starting with the ejector rod. We want to make sure it has spring tension and that it moves freely. And then we're going to take a drop of oil and we're going to place it here on the rod and let it work its way down into the actual inner workings of this assembly. Work it back and forth a few times, make sure that it moves nice and freely, and then you can go ahead and wipe any excess oil off of there. Moving on, we're going to do the same thing on the face of the cylinder. You can see a slight seam where the cylinder actually interacts with the crane right here. I'm going to place a drop of oil on that. Let gravity work it into the gun a little bit, and then I'm just going to give the cylinder a few spins to make sure that that's evenly distributed throughout the gun. You can spin the cylinder in its normal rotational direction or opposite. Doesn't matter. You're not going to hurt it doing this. Now I can wipe down any excess. And we can move on to lubricating the firing mechanism of the gun. Now, if you have access to a gunsmith or a certified armorer, they can remove the side plate for you and actually lubricate the internal mechanism directly. But at the end user level, the easiest way to do this is as follows. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull this hammer back to full cock, and we're going to take our lubricant, we're going to place a drop of that down the face of the hammer so that where the hammer and the sear interact will be lubricated. Then I'm going to place a drop here on the side of the hammer where I see wear marks, and another drop on the other side of the hammer where I see wear marks. We'll hold the gun upright and we'll let that lubricant work its way down into the firing mechanism. And then once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and cock the hammer and release it 6 to 12 times, making sure that that lube gets evenly spread around the mechanism. When I'm done with that, I can wipe off any excess oil, turn the gun over, and we'll get to the very last part where we're going to lubricate the trigger itself by placing a drop of oil here, and then another drop of oil on the opposite side in the same spot where the trigger and the frame come together. You can stand the revolver on its sights like this for a second and let that lube work its way through the mechanism of the gun. Once you're comfortable with how long you've done that, it can be 10 seconds, it can be up to a minute, it's really up to you. You can go ahead and flip the gun over, and you're going to dry fire it now 6 to 12 times. Once you've gone through that dry fire cycle, you can actually see on the trigger that the lube has been spread around, so we can go ahead and wipe off any excess. And now we're going to go ahead and check the revolver again. We want to make sure there's not any external debris. Everything looks pretty good here. There's no spots where we're seeing loads and loads of excess oil. So if I was going to go and take this to a match next week, it'd be good to go. Now, if I was going to go ahead and put this up for long-term storage in between hunts or in between shooting seasons, what I'd want to do is put a light coat of surface oil all over the entirety of the revolver. To do that, you can take your bottle of lubricant and you can either place some on your finger and work that in that way, or you can do it the old military way where you place a drop of lube on the table in front of you, dab your finger in that, and use that to wipe down your revolver, repeating as necessary when you run out of lubricant. Now, since for me this is a match gun, I'm going to go ahead and wipe that excess lubricant off because we're going to be taking this out to the range here in a few minutes. But it looks like I've completed the process of cleaning and lubrication and prepping this gun for its next match, or if I wanted to fully lubricate it and prep it for long-term storage, it would be good to go.